So we got a discussion for you today. We're going to have a bit of a cruise war between two of the most popular cruise lines in the United States, and that is Carnival and Royal Caribbean. We know Carnival always gets a bad rap, but we wanted to talk about it. We sailed on our first one, and what we experienced was a bit different from what I think most people might expect. So all that and more, coming right up. So when we talk about ships, the fleet size, Carnival has 26 and Royal has 28. Now, of course, we always know that the Royal ships are some of the biggest ships, if not the biggest ships in the world. And Carnival also has a lot of large ships. So in terms of ship count, the fleet for Royal Caribbean is a bit bigger, but for Carnival, it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah, Royal has 28 and Carnival only has 26. But of that 28 the Royal has, they hold the top 6 spots for the largest ships worldwide. So they really do go for bigger if bigger is better. I remember the first time we cruised on a larger ship, we cruised on big ships and smaller ships, and the elevator situation. I'm just going to call it the elevator situation because even though it's a larger ship and they have more elevators, the wait can be insane, especially if it's just after a show or, I don't know, even sometimes in the middle of the day. I often found myself taking the stairs. I mean, it's a good workout because I like the cookies and there's usually a lot of cookies, but there can be a long wait for those larger ships with the stairs, or with the elevators. So if we had to pick who was the best, I think marginally I would say Royal is. They do have the larger ships. They do have more variety. So it's pretty close, but Royal would maybe take the win for that category by just a little bit.
Although it's based on preference, some people like the smaller ships, and there are some smaller ones in both Royal's fleet and in Carnival's fleet. So if that's something you're looking for, that's okay. There is no real winner in terms of what you prefer, but just in terms of stats, there's more on Royal that are bigger, and Carnival has less bigger ships. So if you're looking for biggest, there you go. So let's get into cabins. How is the amenities in your bedroom when you're on a ship? So when it comes to Carnival, they're of course about fun. They've got a lot of bright colors. You've got ships like the Mardi Gras, which really leans into that sort of stuff. But on Royal Caribbean, it's a bit more muted, muted. It's a bit more blue. It's a bit more calmer colors that you'll normally notice inside your room. From the topic of what's in the stateroom, they're about the same. Sizes are about the same. Of course, it depends on the cabin class you choose. However, they're about the exact same size between both of them. They also have private areas. So in Royal Caribbean, you have suites, and those can, of course, be quite expensive. And on Carnival, you have the Havana suites, and those Havana suites are a little bit more accessible in price. We will get to price later. However, a little bit more accessible to most people when it comes to booking class up to get a private area versus the suite area on Royal Caribbean.
Yeah, they definitely have the same in terms of the amenities that you get in your room. If you've never cruised before and you're trying to figure out which cruise line to go with, often cruise cabins are much smaller than hotel rooms. So just keep that in mind. So your cabin will probably be smaller than what you've experienced before. And for Royal Caribbean, they are getting into the wearable keys, is what I'll call them. If you've been to Disney, you know the magic bands. They're getting more into that. And we had it with ours where we had our room keys, and in the room we had, the hooks were not near the door, they were near the balcony. And so we kept sort of putting our lanyards there, and not once, not twice, but 3 times we left our room without our room key. And I definitely got to do the walk of shame back to find our room stored to get back into the room. So regardless if you got a bracelet or if you just got your room key or on a lanyard, make sure you've got it near the door so you do not do as we did and forget them. In terms of who wins this category, they do both Carnival and Royal have a variety of cabins, but Royal does have more types and more options. So I would have to again give the win to Royal just because they have more variety of cabins to choose from. Now, cost is going to be separate, and we'll talk about that later, but in terms of just variety of staterooms, Royal Caribbean would take the win for this one.
As we all know, food is a big part of a cruise. We're going to break this up. Linda's going to cover Carnival, I'm going to cover Royal Caribbean, and we're going to talk about the food on board. So I find Royal Caribbean to be a lot more sort of a traditional dining experience. You've got your main dining room or your MDR, and that's where you would meet up with your friends and groups. You can have anytime dining or set scheduling, just like most cruise lines, but it's very much focused on the main dining room. And when you go to the main dining room, you can get a lot of the food that already exists on the cruise ship. So for instance, Crown Grill, which is their premium steakhouse, you can get the Crown Grill steak in the MDR. You don't necessarily have to go to Crown Grill. Although there are better things. We have a video about Crown Grill if you're interested in Crown Grill, but there are premium things you can get at Crown Grill that you don't get at the MDR. But a lot of that food is actually shared elsewhere. So if you go to Playmakers, the chicken wings are going to be the same chicken wings you might get somewhere else. If you get hot dogs, those hot dogs are going to be the same hot dogs you get up on the pool deck. If you get hamburgers, they're going to be the same hamburgers that you get on your pool deck. It's very similar. So a lot of the food that you get across the ship, you'll notice is kind of reused. Not as much as we noticed on NCL when we cruised on NCL, but quite a bit. It's going to be very focused on MDR. A lot of people hit the MDR. It's a huge venue on these big ships. So
poor Aaron had a big letdown at the doghouse when he was hoping for different hot dogs, and it was pretty much the same.
I am a hot dog fan. One might say connoisseur.
Oh gosh, there's a label for it.
but in reality, I was really looking forward to it because I'm like, oh, there's different hot dogs. I get different toppings. Maybe I can get different things on it. No, that's not the way that works. It's basically just the hot dogs you get everywhere else and a couple sausages that you also get at other places across the ship. So again, it's not horrible and it's a lot of fun and kids will enjoy it and the food is good. However, it's a little bit more focused on the main dining rooms. Food is kind of repurposed but themed differently. We had this chocolate dessert. And basically every restaurant, from the premium restaurants to the chef's table to just a regular restaurant, had the same dessert, just slightly differently presented, which again isn't horrible. It's just one of those things where like a lot of the food, like they get a bulk amount of food and they reuse them for different venues, and that's okay. But just expect that.
Yeah, I do actually have to say, just before getting into Carnival, the Royal Caribbean's main dining room had really good food. It was actually, I wouldn't say the best, but right up there for main dining room food and the quality of it. It came out hot. It came out pretty quick. The French onion soup was really good. So it is a solid MDR if that's what you're looking for. Just the food elsewhere isn't as good. So in contrast to that, though, for Carnival, the MDR, I would say, is not that great. We had long waits. One day we went for the brunch, and it was a 2.5-hour sea day brunch. And for me, there's other things I'd rather be doing on my sea day than a 2.5-hour brunch. So I don't think they have as many staff working in the main dining room, which is why it's slower. And then the food also doesn't come out as hot in their main dining room. That being said, their counter service elsewhere was amazing. By far the best. They had the Shack's chicken. And the first time we went there, or we just so happened to be walking by and we saw all these people lined up. And I was like, oh, what are they lined up for? And it was Shack's. And we went the next day. And I think we then went back every day afterwards. We also had the best burger at sea. They have the Guy's Burger Joint, and that's included. And these are included in your cruise fare. And they were really good. So if you're not a sit-down MDR person, maybe you're more of the buffet type, they have a buffet as well. It's okay. But these quick service where things are made fresh, the counter, are so good. Definitely, it was definitely the best that we had on the cruise ship. I mean, the only other one, and we're not comparing them right now, would be the Disney's pool deck dining was very good as well. But comparing Royal with Carnival's, Royal's quick service food, way, way better. So when it comes to a winner for this category, if the MDR and sitting with your family is something that's really important to you, definitely Royal Caribbean. However, if you are more on the go and the sit-down dining is not something you're interested in, you like doing the quick service counter kind of style stuff, Carnival for sure, hands down, wins over Royal Caribbean for this category.
And a good reason to subscribe to us is we are putting our body on the line to find out what the best pizza is on a cruise ship. It's difficult. We're sorry. We decided we would take on that responsibility.
And try all the pizza.
Try all the pizza. So we will get back to you on best pizza on a cruise ship. So talking about subjective categories, because we know food is somewhat subjective to people that enjoy it. So, take all of this with a grain of salt. Entertainment, another subjective area. But in general, you'll notice on Royal Caribbean that Royal Caribbean has a lot more extreme activities. That isn't to say other lines don't, but Royal Caribbean, you have bumper cars, you have zip lines, you have all sorts of stuff, flow riders, you have all these different categories of entertainment that is a bit more extreme than you would get on most cruise lines. And so they really do focus on that sort of older kid entertainment. You can think of Disney, where it's a lot younger kid entertainment, which is awesome. I wish I was young and was on a Disney cruise. But you've got Royal Caribbean, which I think tries to appeal to the majority of cruise line passengers and parents and kids. And so they've got a lot more extreme sports along with non-extreme sports. There's a lot of activities on the ship like bingo and everything else that you expect on every other ship, trivia, Harry Potter trivia, things like that you'll find throughout the ship. But they do add in that rock climbing wall that's gigantic at the back of the ship. You've got a whole bunch of, I think it's the biggest rock climbing wall we've seen on a ship. You've got zip lines that go over a big gap in the ship. You've got all sorts of really sort of thrilling entertainment versus other cruise lines.
Yeah, I think for Carnival, like there is a lot of similarity between the both mini putting, water slides, pools. They all have that. Carnival does have the first roller coaster at sea.
Yes.
It's not included. It does cost extra, but definitely worth the try at least once.
And I think I will say that I was incorrect about that because you rode that and I thought it was going to be a bad idea, but it sounded like you liked it.
It was pretty fun. I mean, we did pay to do it twice, and that was our little splurge or whatever, but it was a lot of fun. We did enjoy doing that. And so we have a video about it if you're interested to know if that's something that you would be interested in. So Carnival does have a lot of those fun entertainment. They have anything from roller coaster to basketball court. You aren't going to be bored, and you can make it whatever you want. I know they have a wrap for mini putt.
And some of it might depend on the cruise you're on. Like that North Star, they've got this big arm that lifts you up and this glass thing. If you're in Alaska, that would be an amazing thing to do, right?
Yes.
If you do it in the Caribbean, it's fun, but like in Alaska, that's an amazing thing to do. And so there's also a bit of entertainment based on where you are. And I think, you have to decide that on your family and on where you're going.
Because we really did love the 80s deck party on Carnival. That was pretty epic. We did not bring costumes or stuff to wear. So if you're on Carnival and you're going to that 80s deck
cost, right? We know Carnival has a bit of a bad rap when it comes to being the cheap party cruise, and there are some of those in terms of, 2-day sailings that you might get at March break. But in general, Carnival is a bit of a cheaper price point. They have a premium area that is private, the Havana, that is a cheaper price point than you would have for Royal Caribbean, which only has the suites. Royal Caribbean generally has the newest, biggest ships, and those are going to be expensive. Some of their older ships can be competitive in terms of Carnival, but generally speaking, both of them are going to be your all-market, everybody style cruises, and they compete on that. Carnival usually has a slightly lower price point. If you want something more upscale, there is, of course, Princess that comes from Carnival. There is also Celebrity, which comes from Royal Caribbean. So those are your sort of brands that are a little price point higher. These are your everybody price brands. So in terms of both of them, I think you will notice, even if you go on Royal Caribbean, you still have to pay more for a lot of the additional entertainment that they have on board. There are additional cost restaurants as there are on Carnival. Carnival is going to be your slightly cheaper brand over Royal. But I would like to say, keep in mind, Carnival is the world's largest brand. So sometimes you do hear about things that happen on Carnival cruises. Do take it with a grain of salt. There is also more people on Carnival cruises, which means there will be more things that happen on a Carnival cruise. So on to itineraries. This is where you're going to go on your ship, the ports you're going to visit. So when it comes to Royal Caribbean has a lot of different options across the world. They do have Europe. You can sail Europe. You can enjoy those areas, Asia, China, all sorts of places. They do, based on their name, focus a lot on the Caribbean. However, you can use that anywhere, and that is helpful if you're going to join the Royal Caribbean ecosystem and get their points and start getting status. You're not stuck to just the Caribbean, because you can sail Caribbean tours a lot, and they can be somewhat repetitive. So you can sail around more places, and it's all around. They have a pretty good set of itineraries, different islands, different places. Of course, that doesn't mean you'll always make your island, as any cruise line may not, but they have a lot of different destinations and places that you would like to go. They have small ships, big ships. Smaller ships get into smaller ports. Bigger ships get into, obviously, the gigantic ports like Cozumel and Costa Maya. But in general, you can go just about anywhere with Royal Caribbean.
Yeah, Carnival is a bit more US based. They do have sailings elsewhere in the world, but they are definitely primarily US based sailings, and they do vary in length. They offer more shorter cruise, and that does help with the price as well. I mean, if I've got the option between not cruising at all or going on a 3-day Carnival cruise, I definitely would be going on a 3-day Carnival cruise with my family to get away and experience some travel. So they do have that option as well for you. So in terms of winning on terms of itinerary, it's really what you're looking for and where you want to be going. So it's hard to say who wins on that. I mean, for a lot of people who live in the States, being able to drive to a port is a huge option as well. So being that they travel more, Carnival goes more out of the US. But if you are looking for more overseas stuff, then Royal would be the option there. Now, then also like sort of leaning into itineraries, I would say, in the private islands that they offer as well. For Carnival, they do have some private islands, but they've also invested in places like Grand Turk and Amber Cove where they've paid for that and only their brand, Carnival brand ships can stop there. But it's not an all-inclusive place. You could be stopping at any what we would call manufactured port, and that's the experience there. So it's not quite the same as what they have with Royal.
Yeah, Royal Caribbean, you basically got Coco Key, and Coco Key is amazingly huge, and it is one giant place that is mostly all-inclusive. There is a thrill water park. We have a video about that if you're interested in what's there. But it's got water slides. I think it's the largest water slide in the Bahamas. It's got a wave pool. It's got all sorts of stuff. But if you don't want that, they also have just places you have beach water. You can sit, you can enjoy, you can get food on the island. So it's a little bit more of an all-inclusive cruise port, and it's singular.
Yeah.
As Linda said, opposed to Carnival, which kind of has Carnival their own built ports. We call them manufactured,
Yeah.
which means it's not like an organic city you land in. They built a facility in the middle of nowhere, and you can pay to use it. So as we get into overall, we're going to break this up. I will start with my overall opinions on both brands. I think it's all about what you want and what works for your family. Royal Caribbean, I think, is a lot more of a generic entertainment sort of beast, if you will. You've got a lot of really great entertainment on board. You've got decent food. It's a little bit more traditional in the MDR style, I find. Price point's a little bit higher, but you have a lot of great entertainment. If you've got younger kids that can go on the flow riders, kids that can do the zip lines, things like that meet those ages, then I think that's a great option if that's what your kids love.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If you're not going to be using those amenities, you are paying a price for other things on Royal Caribbean. If it's between sailing and it's a little bit cheaper on Carnival and going on a trip or not going on a trip, I definitely would be going with Carnival. There's a lot of pros on Carnival that they offer for different sailors or sailings. So I do have a hard time picking one overall. I think when we go to look for what cruise we want, one of the first things we're looking for is our itinerary. Is it stopping at where we're looking to be stopping at? So that would be the first sort of breakdown between Royal and Carnival. Then it's who are we sailing with? Are they going to be interested in all those Royal amenities? Then it sort of comes down to cost.
Yeah.
So now your priorities may differ than that. Cost may be the first thing for you when you're looking at where you're going and then breaking down from there. So really, they are both great cruise lines. You can make your cruise whatever you want it to be, party, relaxing, thrilling, and they both offer different opportunities for that. So we'd love to hear your ideas in the comments below. Have you tried sailing with both cruise lines? Are you looking at trying a new cruise line? Because cruising definitely is a great way of locking you in with those incentives. If you hit your second and third cruise, you move up in categories. So a lot of people we've met don't actually try different cruise lines. So I'm interested to know if you have, and we love hearing your ideas and opinions in the comments below. We love being part of this community, and we really appreciate you taking the time to support our channel. So feel free to like and subscribe. That does mean a lot to us. Thanks again for watching, and happy travels.